Welcome to Pass the Baton, empowering students in music education. Here, we amplify the voices of music teachers around the world who are passing the baton and creating environments where the music students are empowered. Together, we can help students transform from passive consumers to vibrant creatives. Welcome back to the Pass the Baton podcast. I'm Kathryn Finch.
And I'm Theresa Hoover. Thanks for joining us today. So this is our wrap-up episode for season 4. Kathryn, would you ever have imagined we'd have 4 seasons of this back when we started?
No. I mean, again, I'm still like, if you had told me years ago that I was going to write a book, I would have been like, you're kidding, So
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
But it's been fun. And, so season 4, it looks like, not including this episode, we've put out 21 episodes. Which is awesome. And we've had probably just as many guests on the podcast who have been just incredible. Like
it is like the best part of it is that we get to meet these incredible people and call them our friends. And, sometimes you can actually see them in real life, which is cool.
Oh, that is the best when we go to conferences and get to meet some of these wonderful guests. Yeah. And listeners of the podcast for that matter. I've at various conferences had the opportunity to meet people who listen. And that's it's one of the greatest like compliments and feel good moments when people say, I listened and I loved it, and it just makes you smile for sure.
Yes, it does.
Yep. So today's episode, we're going to kind of recap some different things from episode 4. We're also going to talk about what's coming up, some things going on this summer, next school year, all of that. So again, we're happy to be here. Other fun things from this year, Pass the Baton, the book turned 4 in November. Also really exciting.
Very wild.
Thinking back to when the book came out, it was November 1st, 2020. So we were in a very different time then. And again, it's just been really neat to see where that has gone, and just how many different teachers and therefore how many students it's touched.
Yeah. Well, it was almost a really good time for it to come out in the sense that it really we all were thrown into this reset of life, basically. So it was a really great time to kind of, for some people have said, like when they picked it up, like this was the best time for me to start, getting back into the classroom, but questioning all of the traditions and things and making sure that they really truly fit and are best for kids. And, this whole idea of, are there musical decisions that I'm making that the children can make? Right. So I think we panicked a little bit as 2020. Yes. Oh my goodness. But it really was a good time.
Yeah.
Come out.
Yeah. And, people are still picking up the book today. And that's also been really encouraging that 4 years later, it's still relevant. Now, are there little things like obviously the technology chapter, things have evolved. We knew that was the case. Whenever you write something about technology, it becomes out of date the next day. But, I think there's a lot of things in it that are still really relevant and still really valuable for music teachers.
Yeah.
So let's see, what else have we done in the last year? So last summer, our coffee club was launched. And if you're not familiar with the coffee club, in there we have like a members only section where if you join the coffee club, you get access to special resources, things for the classroom, lesson plans, templates, a private podcast, which has just short, like 15-minute episodes of really actionable things that you can do in the classroom. We've had monthly planning parties where we get together on Zoom and just talk about what we're working on and, brainstorming ideas, things like that. So the coffee club has been a fun one.
Yeah. And I kind of like the sense that some of the resources really match some of the private podcasts. So like we're really kind of getting in depth of all of those things of like, but how, and of course, my how is different than your how, then it's different than another member's how, but it still kind of helps to really dive deep into something and see somebody else's process. So
yeah, absolutely. So for example, we did one just talking about the student center, that area of the classroom where you have all the things that kids are going to need. And what your student center in elementary general music classroom looked like was very different than what I needed for, say, middle school band. But we found that just kind of sharing what those two different versions can be like can give people some ideas for what's going to matter for their classroom. And then we created the resource with the checklist with just additional ideas and things you can use for that.
Yeah.
So that's been fun. So yeah, that was a good, and it's also been a lot of fun to create those resources. So I always say this, but if you ever have things that you're like, hey, we've heard you talk about this, can you give us more info? Or,
Yeah.
can you share some of these resources? Let us know if there's things specifically that you would like to see for resources, because a lot of times, we have things that we can tweak and we can share for you.
Yeah.
We tried something new this past May. Some of you, actually, like April, May, some of you were involved with the post concert creativity challenge. I feel like the other thing I hear a lot is, what do we do after the concert, right? It's that those awkward couple of weeks where you're not preparing repertoire, but you still have the students and you still want to make music meaningful, right? We don't want to
Yeah.
just, be wasting our time in class. So we created the post concert creativity challenge, where once a week for 4 weeks we sent you an email with just a little creative activity you could do. We tried to make it that it could be adapted for the littlest learners to your high school kids, ensembles, general music, any of that. And that's been also been fun to see what people are doing with their different challenges.
Yeah. And we've also heard people say, when do I try those super fun, creative things, because we've got a concert. And so that post-concert idea is the best
Yeah,
time when you're like, okay, so there the risk is low in the sense of you do have this built-in time.
right,
This is a great time to try it. And then oftentimes I've learned it doesn't have to be such a big thing. And then now
right,
it can seep into my everyday. But sometimes you
right.
do need to like set aside the time, try something new, see how it goes, and spend that quality time on it. But yeah, I think a lot of members will find like, I can do this in a warm up. I can do this,
Yeah.
you know, all the
Yeah.
time.
But like you said, sometimes you just need to have the time, like, oh, okay, I'm not in concert mode right now.
Right.
Let's try this, to give you the confidence to then say,
Yeah.
oh, okay, this can fit in throughout the school year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also why I tried to make all those activities short. So you could be like,
Yes.
this could be a 10-minute thing, or it could be expanded to a full class thing. It just kind of depends on need.
What you got?
So if you weren't part of the post creativity concert challenge, or the post concert, sorry, post concert creativity challenge, um, we're going to do something with those resources. Haven't quite decided where they're going to end up yet, whether it'll be on the website and the coffee club. I don't know. So just kind of stay tuned if you didn't already get in on that and you're interested. Because, as Kathryn just said, it doesn't just have to be after a concert. It really could be anytime throughout the school year. So we'll find a way to repackage them to make sure that more people can get a hold of it. I'm just haven't gotten there yet, because you know
No,
what? It's the end of the school year.
it is. Brain needs rest.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Totally. So speaking of end of school year, Kathryn, your summer break's about to start. What
it
kind of things are
is.
you looking forward to?
Well, we have a new family member.
You
Yes,
do.
yes. He's two and he loves to run and he is a Brittany mix and
Okay.
loves our other dog Clover. And so we have two big moose in the house. Um, but yeah, no, love them to death. And I look forward to long walks in the summer and just spending time with the dogs and
Awesome.
my family. But
Yeah.
my son is in college and he is not coming home this summer, which is a
Oh,
proud moment, right? Like
yeah.
he's doing his thing, and I love that he's doing his thing. I'll miss him this summer, but
Mhm.
want them to
Right.
do their own thing, and he's doing it.
Yeah.
So
So you now have two two-legged children and two four-legged children.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Well, that's
And
fun.
you've got exciting things.
I do. So, me and my four-legged friend Dizzy, we are actually moving back across the country. So I'm sure most of you remember this. I've been in Phoenix, Arizona for the last 3 years working on a PhD in music learning and teaching. And I am going to be moving to North Carolina for a faculty position at East Carolina University, which is super, super
Yeah,
exciting. I'm not done the degree yet. Still have to do the dissertation, but yeah, I'm very excited for my faculty position. So I'll be teaching music education majors. So I'll have, it looks like in the fall semester, 3 classes where I'm working with undergraduate music ed majors, and then 1 class with grad students who are doing a master's in music ed. I'm so excited. I can't,
yeah,
I've been over the last couple of years, had maybe one class a semester working with undergraduate students, and I've really loved it because I've been focusing on my coursework. So now I'm really excited to be able to do this full time. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be really great. So, but of course that means moving across the country, which is a
Thing.
thing. It's a big thing. Thank goodness for moving companies.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're excited. So if anybody's in the North Carolina area, I know that I'll be going to NCMEA next year. And if you're specifically near ECU, near East Carolina, let me know. It'd be great to meet up. And I'm excited to. One thing that's neat about this position is they were telling me that there's a lot of involvement with the community. So I'm going to
Okay.
have a lot of opportunities to go into schools and see teachers and work with students and all of that. And I think that in conjunction with working with these pre-service teachers is going to be awesome.
Mhm. Yeah, I think so.
So
I can't wait to hear all about it.
yeah. And then I think I mentioned I'm still working on my dissertation. I'm going to say this. If you have not filled out my survey yet, pretty
Yes,
please.
we need
Pretty
to.
please. Yeah. So, because my dissertation research is all about why music teachers listen to podcasts and trying to learn more about what's motivating people to listen and also what benefits they're getting. So if you haven't had a chance to do it, it's it's out there. So I would
Yeah,
greatly appreciate it.
we can link it here,
Oh,
right?
good point. Yep, we can
Yeah,
link it in
let's
the
link
show
it
notes.
here. So you just
Awesome.
look in the show notes, click, take I did it. Didn't take me very long.
Mhm.
And it's
Yeah. I think when I finally get all of the results in and have a chance to like look through it, it's going to be fascinating. I can
yeah.
tell already. So, yeah. But then again, that's the nerdy stuff that we do when you're a dissertation student and you're working on a PhD. But yeah, so that's my summer. My summer is going to be a lot about moving and getting ready for the new job. Although, Kathryn, we do have some summer stuff that we're doing together, right?
Well, yeah, yeah. That'll be nice. To this is our next second run of Pass the Baton at VanderCook College. So that'll be nice to
Yeah.
work with some new people and
Yeah. So if you're looking for graduate credit, VanderCook
yep.
has a really awesome summer program for music teachers to get graduate credits. And we're going to be teaching our Pass the Baton book study class, which is awesome. Um, I think from what this is, as Kathryn said, this is our second time running the course. The first time we ran it, it was great because what teachers did was, you were reading the book along with us, and then we had activities. I don't know if is the right word, but we just had things for you to do in conjunction with each step of the way. So there were discussions where you were discussing things. You kept a journal, kind of thinking like, you know, um, as things came to you, like this is what I was thinking about as I was reading this section. This is what are some of my experiences have been. And then we actually had you creating lesson plans, like
Yeah.
things that you could use in your classroom. So the idea is that as you go through this course, you're going to be planning things that when you go back to school in August, September, whatever it is, you've got stuff that you can implement. So I
Yeah.
feel like it's a win-win because not only are you earning that grad credit that we all need to continue our licensure, but you're also going to find something that's useful and meaningful and relevant for your students.
Yeah. And there's the time to think about it and voice concern and voice, excitement and all those things so
Yeah.
that when in the fall, it's not this new thing. You've just already got yourself, like you said, lessons, but also some plans of how am I going to implement some of these things, which I think will make people feel, more prepared for the fall.
Yeah. So that's fun. It starts on June 9th. Usually you can register a couple days late if you're not hearing this until say June 10th. But
Yeah.
yeah, it starts on June 9th. It's an 8-week course again through VanderCook. We'll put that in the links as well in case
Yeah.
that's something that you're interested in. We have a great group enrolled so far, and I'm excited. I find that it's also really neat to have those conversations across
Oh,
states.
yeah.
Somebody in Maryland is talking to somebody in Illinois, and you're having these conversations, sharing ideas, and it's just yeah, it's
Yeah.
some of the perfect PD.
And even like, it's general music, it's band, it's orchestra, it's choir teachers. And just, when you hear someone from choir talk about something and I'm general music, I still find connections and things.
Oh yeah.
So it's really great to kind of, sometimes we connect with job likes over, different sections of the music of an education,
Yeah.
right? But here, you just everyone's talking, and it's just a great. There's just great different perspectives.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as the podcast, right? I feel like every
Yeah,
episode, no matter what the person's talking about, we can make those connections. But sometimes it's helpful to just be thinking like, oh, I'm a high school person. Let's hear what the general music person has, because that kind of impacts, right? That's where the students start. That
right.
impacts me and vice versa. So
Yeah,
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 so that'll be that. Also this summer, we mentioned the coffee club earlier. We're brewing up some surprises there too. So stay tuned. Probably midsummer we'll have some announcements about what, the second year of Coffee Club will look like.
yeah,
Building off of just the things that have happened so far. So be sure to stay tuned for that.
yeah.
Um, so Kathryn, like thinking specifically about the podcast. This is going to be a really hard question. But if you had if you
I
had to
know.
pick maybe a favorite episode from season 4, could you
I
do
know.
one? What do you think?
Yeah, well, it is tough. It is tough because just again, there's so many different voices this time around 21, right? That were or different episodes that were just all really interesting. But Matthew Stensrud does stick out. I
Okay.
got to see him at a state conference, and it was just wonderful to watch him and observe him, teach. I've read his book, or he's co-written The Responsive Classroom for Music, Art, and
Mm,
PE. And such a good book. Love that you can just kind of take apart. I don't like Pass the Baton too, right? You can kind of read a section and just spend time there, you know?
yeah.
So but yeah, no, he was great to talk to, right? It just
Yeah.
yeah. I think the biggest things were just like the ideas of the responsive classroom, like really making building relationships with kids and really having kids like hear you say like what do you need, how can I help you, and like I think that's such a important question for kids to hear that they don't always hear, right? It's like
Yeah.
calm body, sit in your space, but I guess but asking the question what do you need or what's happening is kind of going deeper into like, what do you need? Do you need a break? Do you need to walk? How can I help you regulate so that you are getting, so I'm really getting to the root of the problem, and
Mm.
then you, my student that I care about and have building relationship is can be in a better place for next time. And so important and so different than just giving them directives, right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. It
Yeah.
really does. Yeah, he was an enjoyable episode for sure. Like a fun
Yeah.
interview.
Well, and then I think then that went into then that his idea of creating inclusive spaces, because then when you've built those relationships and kids are like, wait, Mrs. Finch really does care and want to help me
Yeah.
regulate. Like maybe I coming from recess and I always am a little bit revved up and I just need to take some deep breaths or get a drink of water. And that movement and reset's going to help me. Now when I'm ready to say like, I want them to sing by themselves or I want them to try something and offer something of themselves, we've built some community and we've built just some, it's a safe spot, right?
Yeah.
If I want you to take risks, and music is always about, right? Like offering different or, giving yourself up to do a solo or do something like that. Like
Yeah.
we've got to build a safe space. We've got to build that relationship. So I thought that was so good to hear in his episode too, of the idea of just really being intentional with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So if you had to pick,
Yeah, this is also hard. But I think I would have to say it would be episode 77 with Stephen Cox.
uh
He
yes,
he was wonderful. I found myself the whole time going, uh-huh, like tell me more, right?
yeah,
Um, Stephen talked about so many different things, but a lot of it that really stuck out to me was when he was talking about having the mindset of we want lifelong musicians, not a band student for a year, not, a choir kid for while they're in middle school, but lifelong musicians. And what are we doing as music teachers to really help the students achieve that, right? And sometimes that might look different than we would expect, or it, might look different than what we experienced when we were in school. But that was it. He talked a lot about like meeting the students where they are, right?
Hmm.
Thinking about who is actually in your classroom, similar to Matthew, really, because he
Yeah.
was saying the same thing, building those relationships, knowing who is in your classroom, and thinking about how that can align with what you do moving forward.
Yeah. He really seemed to like take joy in I think he would even say like his first job like was a dream job to him, but to others wouldn't have been a dream job. But like,
Yeah.
he really saw people for who they are, where they're at, and
Hmm.
like wanted to be a part of their process of getting better. And like that's
Right.
so cool to just instead of like, oh my gosh, these are all the things I don't have in this program. It was like, ooh, we can build this together. And
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah. And he also talked a lot about creativity and how are we
Mhm.
thinking about creativity in our classes, especially our ensembles, where, as we mentioned before with our, the creativity challenge, sometimes that creating piece falls behind as we worry so much about the performance piece. But Stephen really talked about how like giving them the opportunities to create and finding those opportunities to really think about how students are being creative is valuable. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, again, we had so many good episodes this season, but that was one that was just a favorite for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I think what we want to do is we're going to actually play some highlights from some of these episodes, just some clips in case you missed them, or you need that refresh, or a moment to remember what it was. Before we get to that, just some other things to remember. Be sure that you follow us on social media. On Instagram, it's Pass the Baton Music Ed, and we're also on Facebook, which I think is just Pass the Baton Book. So make sure you're following us there. Make sure that you're getting the newsletter. Newsletter comes out only every other week. Trust me, we don't have time to email you more than that. So every other week, we'll put a link to that in the show notes so you can sign up if you're not already on the mailing list. Newsletter will usually tell you about a new podcast episode, which obviously, if you're listening, you know about the podcast. But then we try to put some other resources, some things that we've found really useful, interesting, things that are coming up. Just try to give you some things to think about for your classroom, and things that we think are going to be helpful along this realm of student ownership, student centered learning, things like that.
Yeah. And that's where you can find those fun, like your creative challenge, right? Like
Yeah.
this, you're going to know, ooh, there's one that's coming out. I want to,
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Exactly. Um, our website, passthebatonbook.com, has a whole bunch of different resources on there, free resources, things that you can download, use in your classroom. And then if you want the more exclusive resources and private podcasts, that's where the coffee club comes in. So make sure you check that out. We have some of the free resources in the coffee club as well. They're kind of in both spots just so you can find them. But yeah, all of that stuff's going to be linked in the show notes. So make sure that you check it out. You can keep in touch with us over the summer, because we're not going to have any new episodes until season 5. And that'll be, what do we think, Kathryn? Like August-ish?
Yeah.
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 So we're going to spend some time this summer recording new episodes, but we won't be releasing any until closer to the next school year. So you don't want to miss us. You'll have time to catch up on past episodes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I guess let's get to some highlights.
Another thing that's you're passionate about talking about is like the sense of belonging and the sense of inclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe we could start with just why is that important in a music classroom? I mean, we both know it is, but just to talk, kind of be explicit of like, why is that important?
Absolutely. The first thing I think of is the fact that making music is a risk for students to take, especially when we ask them to sing, when we ask them to improvise, when we ask them to work in small groups and move. Those are all ways that kids put themselves out there that they might not always do each and every day. And for kids to feel safe taking risks, they need to feel a sense of belonging and they need to feel comfortable in your space. And that's the first thing I jump to when why we created an inclusive space, because it actually helps them be better musicians and better participants in the space. Another reason, of course, is just the fact that we want each student to feel like they're valued for who they are. And when we offer windows and mirrors, or places for kids to both see themselves and learn about other people, we're making sure that each student feels valued. Another possibility for why students should feel valued is kind of that aspect of when we ask students questions, we want to take in their responses. And sometimes we ask questions when we're looking for right answers, but oftentimes in the Orff Schulwerk approach, we take everyone's ideas and we say, let's try it out. And then the students can kind of realize which ones are their favorites, or which ones maybe the teacher knew wasn't going to work out as great. But when we take those ideas and we say yes and instead of no, we show the students that their ideas are valued. So those are three things that come to mind right away that I jumped at, which was always saying yes and when students offer ideas, making sure we offer windows and mirrors for students to kind of see themselves, and that students take risks when they feel more comfortable in the space.
Yeah.
I love that, because in music, there shouldn't always be a right answer. We should be able to be free to interpret and to try things. And I think sometimes, so I mostly teach secondary, although now I'm working with college students, but in secondary, we feel like there's the right way to do it. There's the right way to play this piece, and there's the right way to phrase this, and there's the right way, but there's not. And if we can let students just try something, we might be pleasantly surprised.
Progressive, I mean student-centered, focused on them, their experience, their outcomes, and not on being system-centered or director-centered, right? So whenever I started making that shift, I was bad at it. It was like I was a new teacher again. I was very uncomfortable. I didn't just go, oh, well, I think that this is the right direction to go. And then I was just marvelous at it, and the results were amazing up front. Like, it's a craft unto its own to figure out how to do this. And the biggest thing is, you have to think about how you're going to define success. Because if defining success is my vision as I see it is executed perfectly by these other people, you're probably not going to achieve that success. But if your sense of success is my students are going to be empowered and excited, they're going to practice way more, they're going to have amazing individual results, the atmosphere is going to be better in my room, they're going to be much more likely to keep playing instruments later, and I'm going to be happier and they're going to be happier, if those are the results you're focused on, I don't think there's another way to do it other than to empower the students. So I think those are the traps, though. The traps are, it's uncomfortable, it's hard. All of this stuff is actually harder than just telling the kids what to do and forcing them to do it. That's easy. That's why, even though there's lots of evidence behind, progressive ideas in education, they don't happen because they're harder. So that's my sense of it.
Added some original sounds from the instrumental loops, and then they got the opportunity to create like a public service announcement, if you will. So they got to say 2 sentences at least about how they felt about the issue and what they felt could be a solution to the issue. And so all of those things put together created this project where students were able to have a sonic justice collage is what it was called. So yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I love how, we talk about student ownership and all that stuff on this podcast. Not only were the students in your classroom taking ownership over something, but so were the student teachers, the university students. And I don't think we think about them quite as often as we should, these pre-service teachers. So I love all of the ways that so many different people were getting to have their voices heard in what you were describing.
Yes. And I think one of the most fun aspects of this project was that we did it with them. So I like to do that. I like to, any project that I'm doing with my kids, especially if it's something like this, I always do it with them so that I can give them an example of what does a finished part of whatever, piece that we're working on that day, what does it look like? And then how did I get there? And then that's how we kind of work through it in the classroom. But it is so much fun. And I got to be creative and to dig in my own creativity bag, while doing this as well. So it's really, really, really cool.
Yeah. I was kind of struck too with how authentic everything was. Because again, and from both sides, right? For the kids, because they were drafting, or they were telling you topics that are very interested, they're very passionate about. But also the college kids who are like, you're making a lesson, and most of the time in classes, right, you're making a lesson, and maybe your classmate, your 8 or whatever 20-year-old classmates are also then doing the lesson with you, but it's not authentic, right? But they got to bring it into a real life classroom and kind of see a teacher roll it out. They got to be part of rolling that out, like that. All that stuff is so valuable.
So my whole thing was, with all of this information, student-centered teaching doesn't tell you what's going on. Whereas teacher-directed teaching tells you, yep, teachers are directing. Master apprentice tells you what's going on. Student-centered, we have no idea what's going on. Centered on the student, everybody got softer in their language and all that. So I thought we need a descriptor that actually describes what's going on. And I came up with reflective partnership teaching. The teaching where we understand the partnership. Well, the partnership is between a teacher and a student. That's not to say they're equals, because they're not. The teacher does know more, and the student is coming to the teacher for information and so on. But their relationship is interactive. They are partners. They're both invested in this process. And what are they invested in? They're invested in sharing their reflections with each other. So not just sharing information. Information is not enough. We have to get to the reflective stage. So that's the big background to reflective partnership teaching. To talk about teaching in a different way that's not master and apprentice, it's not teacher directed, it's not just student centered in the sense that we're using a nicer positive language. We're changing the paradigm completely, which is to say, instead of the one-way communication we had before, we've got two-way communication happening. Instead of teachers telling students when they play well, we have teachers and students engaged in a reflective relationship, so both of them know what's going on. Long story, there it is.
But it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just that word partnership, I love that, because and yes, you said it doesn't mean they're 100% equals, but they're working together. The teacher's working with the student's working with the teacher. And I think that's the really important piece that we forget sometimes when we want to just tell our students how to do something. Nope, do it this way, do it this way, do it this way. But really, it's a conversation.
You can't make assumptions about what students want, right? And what would interest them. And that education is really a dialogue, right? The whole way through, like in the planning process, it should be a dialogue. In the execution process, it should be a dialogue. And on the back end, like, it shouldn't just be like, well, that's our last lesson, best wishes for the future. I think we really gain a lot by continuing a conversation of, what are you interested in doing? How is it going as we're doing it? And how did it go? Where do you want to go next? What should we change?
Yeah.
That's such a big piece. Like the student voice piece is necessary. And like you said, it needs to be there throughout the whole thing. Sometimes we've talked about like people who will ask the question at the beginning, but then never come back to it throughout the rest of the experience, the project, whatever it is. So we have to not only ask the questions, have the dialogue, but put something in action and then take the time to reflect with the student afterwards.
The actual student's voice is so important, right? And I think about how many rehearsals have we been in or observed or even led where we never heard a student's voice, even once in that rehearsal, right?
Thanks for joining us. If you have found value in our conversation, please hit that like button, subscribe to our podcast, and leave a review. Your feedback means the world to us and helps us grow our community of passionate music educators.